Well, this convicted killer was on the lam for 2 weeks. He escaped police dragnets. He snuck across law enforcement perimeters, and he almost made it out of the county. But 14 days later, Pennsylvania State Police captured him. But it was Mother Nature who's to be thanked. Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil. It's a great day. This is great news that Danelo Cavalcante has been captured. This guy is now off the street, and hopefully there won't be another mistake made like the one that allowed him to sneak out of that county jail. Now, this is going to be an interesting case to see unfold as we learn more from the insiders and maybe even Cavalcante as he shares what he did on the lam during those 2 weeks. I don't know if he'll talk, but if he does, we might learn an awful lot about how he did things. But I want to retrace some of his steps from the moment that he escaped the jail until his capture, just to put it on a map to kind of refamiliarize yourself with the area. And frankly, the challenge that law enforcement faced with those dense forested areas that this guy was traveling along. He worked his way along fence lines and tree lines and creek beds. He snuck along where pipes were. You know, he's not going to try to go through really heavy brush where it's difficult. He wants to cover ground. And he almost got away with this when he stole that van. But for some reason, things didn't work out. And he went back to people he knew and tried to get their help in what was going on. This is going to be really interesting to watch. But first, what I want to do is go and look at that map. So let's take a minute and go through those. Okay, here's the map of the entire course of events in the Cavalcante case. And I want to just start down when this originally occurred, at the point that he escaped prison here. We know that on September 2nd, he was spotted traveling just to the east. By September 4th, he'd made his way down into the Longwood Gardens complex. And there, they shut things down for a short time. On September 5th, he was located again further east. And this was really interesting because we started to see kind of an interesting zigzag pattern created by his travels. Now, these are line of sight travel because we don't know how he got from point A to point B. And we can theorize once he steals a vehicle. But on September 5th, to September 7th, 6th, and 7th, he makes his way back to Longwood Gardens. But then things kind of change, and he travels up to where he's spotted several days later. So let's just get up here. On September 9th, he's spotted near Phoenixville. And here, I don't know if he took a vehicle or not, but he made quite a distance there. And we know that he stole a van along the way. But here he is spotted. Then he makes his way directly west, where he's spotted on September 10th, and that van is recovered. And from there, he makes his way north again into the Bucktown area. That's where he is spotted with the rifle, has that exchange where the man shoots at him, and then in this area he's captured. Now, for some of you, it might be easier to look at this in a three-dimensional view. We did this in my earlier video, but here is the Chester County Jail that he escaped from, and of course we've seen the video of him escaping. What we know is that on September 2nd, he was spotted to the east. And again, pay kind of close attention. This is a pretty small populated county, about 3,000 people in this particular area where he was first seen the first couple of days. From there, he makes his way back to the west again to the Longwood Gardens area. And there he's spotted and later returns. But first, on September 5th, he makes his way again a little bit east. And again, pay attention to how much cover there is here for him to hide in. Again, this shows you kind of the terrain and how difficult that would have been to search in. And this imagery is showing the autumn or maybe even early winter when all the leaves are off the trees. So you can kind of see how difficult this area is. And now take into account the fact that it is heavily wooded and all the leaves are out. He makes his way back to Longwood Gardens somewhere between the 5th and the 7th. And then he makes a long distance trip, and this is where he gets a vehicle and makes his way north and is spotted on September 9th. From there, he travels west again and starts this zigzag pattern once again, where the van is recovered. And once that van's recovered, he's again on foot. 2 days later, he's spotted just north of there, and this is where he has the interchange with the man, and he steals a rifle, and the man shoots at him. And then, of course, a day later today, he is captured by police. Well, this morning at about 8 o'clock Eastern time, they captured this guy. And this is where Mother Nature comes into play. You see, last night was cooler than most nights, and this gave the police thermal technology in the helicopters and airplanes a chance to pick this guy up. You know, Cavalcante hid himself inside of this huge wood pile. His modus operandi was to sneak around at night, try to cover as much ground as he could at night, and then sleep during the day. And what he did is he secreted himself in this wood pile and tucked himself in. Well, because of the cover of night, law enforcement continued to watch him by air. And you can see that in this little image where the flight paths were picked up. And thankfully, thermal imagery from the air vehicles picked him up. And that's what put police on top of him. But it was Mother Nature who cooled things down and made it possible for that dramatic change between the cooler temperatures, the cool terrain, and the heat from Cavalcante's body to pick it up. And as we look at these videos, we see law enforcement bringing this suspect out. And, you know, some people have been pretty unhappy about the fact that the group of law enforcement officers posed with him, kind of like a trophy deer when a hunter gets his deer. You'll find in the press conference a little later that the lieutenant colonel actually talks about that, doesn't hold his guys responsible. In fact, it's kind of a natural thing to after working so hard, 24 hours a day for 2 weeks, they took a moment and posed capturing this predator. And then now as we watch this, we can see law enforcement transporting him from the place where he was arrested and taking him back to the police barracks where they were going to interrogate him further. And here we can see him arriving at police headquarters, and state police take him inside their barracks, and they'll start this process of trying to interrogate him a little bit and then transfer him to a prison where hopefully he'll spend the rest of his life. I don't know if any of you caught his mother, Cavalcante's mother's comments that were reported, where she was saying she hoped that he would just somehow die before going back, and that she was encouraging him not to turn himself in. I don't know what the heck's going on, but obviously this kid had a pretty tough life growing up, but it doesn't equate to 2 murders. One where he stabbed his girlfriend 40 times in front of the children. This guy deserves to be in prison the rest of his life. Now, I want to wrap up this short episode by going right to the press conference and letting you hear from the pros who were there on the ground as they answer some of the questions and kind of recap what happened. But folks, I want to thank you for supporting Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.
I'm pleased to be able to report that thanks to the extraordinary work of law enforcement officials from here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, our local leaders here in Chester County, and from our federal partners all across this nation, shortly after 8 a.m., our suspect was captured. I want to say, first and foremost, thank God there were no injuries to law enforcement or to the public. We obviously became deeply concerned after the suspect was able to steal a weapon. He was apprehended this morning with no shots fired. I want to say thank you to the dedicated law enforcement professionals from every level who each and every day go out of their homes, leave their families, leave their loved ones to keep us safe. The public, over the last 13 days, has had a chance to see what excellence in law enforcement means, what true, dedicated professionalism is all about. I couldn't be more proud to be standing up here today with these professionals from every level. And while they did extraordinary work, we had a tremendous assist from the public here in Chester County. I want to say thank you to the public for their vigilance. Thank you for the constructive tips that they shared. Thank you for remaining on guard. We recognize this has been a concerning and trying time for each and every one of you in the region. And we want to thank you for your support of law enforcement and for your support of this effort that led to this capture today. I hope the good people of Pennsylvania, and indeed the folks all across this nation, got a chance to see how government is supposed to work, how law enforcement is supposed to work, where we all come together, where we focus on the mission. And while the women and men up here behind me may wear different uniforms and different badges, we were here with common purpose, and that was to apprehend this suspect and keep people safe. Leading this effort has been the Pennsylvania State Police. And I know I'm going to get booed by some of the folks behind me for saying this. I believe they are the finest law enforcement agency in the United States of America, and I could not be more proud to be the governor of this Commonwealth and to have the chance to serve in public service alongside these great leaders in the Pennsylvania State Police. Leading the effort for us is Colonel Christopher Paris, who did yeoman's work overseeing this operation together with Lieutenant Colonel Bivens. All Pennsylvanians, gentlemen, are indebted to you for your bravery, for your courage, and for your tremendous leadership. And with that, it's my honor to bring up the Colonel of the Pennsylvania State Police, Colonel Christopher Paris.
Thank you, Governor. I would like to make a few brief comments. I'd like to dedicate those comments to the victims of Cavalcante and their families. At the end of the day, all of the people behind me here work for justice and for the victims. A close second to the people of Chester County. We appreciate your support, and we appreciate the dedication that you have shown us and the generosity that you have shown us. We are in your debt. This was a major operation. We know that it has affected your lives, and we're very much appreciative of that support. I'd like to thank the governor and his support of us, not only with his physical presence, but his work in Harrisburg on a daily basis. I'd like to thank the Border Patrol, Customs, the FBI, the Marshals, the ATF, our federal partners, the Chester County District Attorney, Deb Ryan, and her Chief County Detective, Dave Sassa. Our municipal partners, too numerous to mention here, in Chester, Montgomery, Delaware, and Bucks counties. We could not have done this without everyone. I would like to thank, from the bottom of our hearts, the members of the Pomar Lynn Fire Company. I know the media has been in and out of here. The hospitality that they have shown us, the logistics that you need to bring to bear in an operation like this, we would have been hard-pressed to do that without them being good hosts to us. Lastly, but certainly not least in any way, shape, or form, to the women and men of the Pennsylvania State Police, thank you. Thank you for your hard work and your diligence. This is my third manhunt with Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens. It's not lost on me that it was 9 years to the day yesterday for the Blooming Grove ambush. And in all of those operational cycles, there is no person who enjoys more of my trust and confidence. He was tasked with standing this operation up. My confidence in him is marrow deep. He is the consummate professional, and I would now like to turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Bivens to give you the operational rundown of the capture of Cavalcante. Lieutenant Colonel Bivens.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Colonel. It is a true pleasure to stand here this morning and talk to all of you about bringing this manhunt to a successful conclusion and without getting anyone else hurt, most importantly. None of this would be possible without the support of this team represented by members of various agencies standing with us up here, by others standing throughout this fire hall, and by still more who are out there in the field. So let me give you a few details about how this unfolded. As you know, we have been working most recently in a perimeter established in northern Chester County. Last night, shortly after midnight, a series of events started to unfold. First, we had a burglar alarm at a residence near Prizer Road within the perimeter. Our people investigated that, did not find Cavalcante there or anyone else, but it started to bring some of our people into that area. We had been searching an area not far from there already with some tactical teams that night. There was an aircraft overhead utilizing FLIR technology, and close to 1 a.m. picked up a heat signal that they began to track. It was west of PA 100 and north of Prizer Road. Tactical teams began to converge on that location where the heat source was moving. Unfortunately, we had a weather system that also came in, and we had lightning that was flashing all around, and it caused the aircraft to have to depart the area. Tactical teams made a decision to secure that area, that smaller area, as best they could, and hold it through the storm and until we could bring additional resources in and bring aircraft back overhead to ensure that we did not have an issue with an escape. That resumed early this morning, and shortly after 8 a.m., tactical teams converged on the area where the heat source was. They were able to move in very quietly. They had the element of surprise. Cavalcante did not realize he was surrounded until that had occurred. That did not stop him from trying to escape. He began to crawl through thick underbrush, taking his rifle with him as he went. One of the Customs and Border Control teams, BORTAC, had a dog with them. They released the dog. Some of our PSP CERT members were also there, had him surrounded. The dog subdued him, and team members from both of those teams immediately moved in. He continued to resist, but was forcibly taken into custody. No one was injured as a result of that. Excuse me. He did sustain a minor bite wound. We had medical personnel at the scene, and they took a look at that. Cavalcante was, as I said, taken into custody. He was transported to our Avondale station for further processing and interview, and he will ultimately be transferred to a state correctional institute where he will be housed and begin to serve his life sentence. In just a few minutes, I'll open this up to some questions, but before I do that, I want to turn this over to one of our very close partners, District Attorney Deb Ryan. I know she would like to say a few words, and again, then we'll be happy to take your questions following that. Deb.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Bivens. Today is a great day here in Chester County. Our nightmare is finally over and the good guys won. We owe a debt of gratitude to all of the first responders for their tireless and dedicated efforts in bringing this fugitive to justice. They worked around the clock, and we are deeply grateful to all of them. Our community can finally regain its normalcy and breathe a collective sigh of relief. This would not have happened without the collaboration and efforts on behalf of a multitude of agencies. I need to thank the Governor, Colonel Paris, Lieutenant Colonel Bivens for his unflappable and dedicated leadership, the U.S. Marshals, the Chester County Detectives, the FBI, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, the Department of Emergency Services, the Sheriff's Department, and every single person who went out into the field in the most horrendous conditions. We had weather problems, we had terrain problems, and a ton of obstacles that prevented our capture from occurring as expediently as we wanted. We have the best people in the business, and we never lost faith that this capture would occur. We knew that it was just a matter of time. The scope of this manhunt was extremely impressive. The brave men and women who went out there every single day are our heroes, and I am proud to be a part of this collective team of people who worked around the clock to bring this man to justice during this monumental challenge. They utilized every piece of advanced technology, dogs, drones, helicopters, every asset available was put out for this capture. I can't express our gratitude deep enough to all of them and to the community for their support. We received dozens and dozens of donations, well wishes, and kind support from everyone in the community, and we thank this firehouse for housing us. We know we disrupted their lives for a while. One of the first calls we made upon learning about this capture was to the Brandao family, who, as you can imagine, had been living in a complete nightmare. They are so grateful to the men and women who helped with this capture. They can now finally sleep again. I can't thank law enforcement enough for their efforts. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will be happy to take your questions. Yes.
With the helicopter overboard, we saw the arrest taking place. There was some criticism about the photo op that was taken with the fugitive. Can you explain how that's actually a standard procedure, or what's the reasoning behind the photo op with the fugitive?
I'm aware that there was a photo op that was taken out there. Those men and women worked amazingly hard through some very trying circumstances. They're proud of their work. I'm not bothered at all by the fact that they took a photograph with him in custody. Again, they're proud of their work. They kept the community safe. I say thanks to them and good job.
Sir, did he say anything in the moment that he was captured, and you released the name of the canine officer who bit him during his capture?
We will probably not be releasing the name. And in terms of anything that he said, we need to use an interpreter, and he has been taken back to the station, and at that point, we will attempt to interview him at the Avondale station.
Did he say anything upon capture? Anything at all?
I'm not aware of it. If he did, I don't have that information.
Your officers were authorized to use lethal force if he didn't actively surrender. Was the goal to always take him in alive?
That's always our first choice and preference. Again, that option is only to prevent the escape of a very dangerous individual. Had they not been able to contain him, that would have remained an option.
Who specifically made the arrest? Which organization?
It was a combination. It was a combined group of the Border Patrol and PSP.
When he went into the van, he was stripped and had his tattoos photographed. Is that normal procedure?
Yes.
When the thermal imaging happened at 1 o'clock, was he in the same location when you found him?
Wait, I'm sorry. You'd ask first, man.
Was he asleep when you found him?
He was proned out. I've not been told that he was asleep. I'm told that he was proned out trying to hide and then began to crawl away.
Was it the same location when you got the thermal imaging at 1 and you found him at 8?
It was in that close proximity to that, yes.
What was whether anyone was helping him?
No one was assisting him at that point.
Sir, what was the agency that
That was the DEA, and that was a fixed-wing aircraft.
Were you worried as law enforcement that you had to down the plane and there could be another chance for escape? I mean, that's obviously the plane had to land, but what kind of risk did you have to calculate with that?
Well, you know, as I've told you throughout this investigation, there are always things we have to contend with. Everything isn't scripted and doesn't go perfectly. And so it's just another challenge. Worried, I don't think, is the word that I would use. We simply had to adapt. And so we secured that inner perimeter while always keeping our outer perimeter secure, so that if he did manage to get out of that inner, we would box him in yet again.
How tough an adversary was he? He led some very high-profile, difficult manhunts. How tough an adversary was he compared to somebody else?
You know, I don't know that he was particularly skilled. He was desperate, and I've said that all along. You have an individual whose choice is go back to prison and spend the rest of your life in a place you don't want to be, or continue to try and evade capture. He chose the evade capture. He was in good shape, obviously able to climb, as you saw, to get out of prison. But ultimately, as I said all along, we had an amazing team assembled here, capabilities that are just very formidable. And I was confident all along that he would eventually be captured. And ultimately, this team, and I credit all of them, for bringing together their collective experience, the resources, and being able to apply that and capture him. It's never easy to find someone who doesn't want to be found in a very large area.
Previously you said you were reserving comment on if anybody was helping him throughout the search. I know you said no one helped him this morning. Can you say now that he's in custody whether he received help these last 13 days?
There were people who were intent and intended to assist him. We had been successful. To the best of my knowledge, we had been successful in preventing that assistance from reaching him.
Does that include his sister?
Yes.
There had been some frustration, some criticism from the public as this was stretching on. Now that it's over, do you consider this anything other than a success?
No, it was absolutely a success. And I got to tell you, I think by and large the public stayed amazingly supportive. I had some third grade students stop by yesterday and drop off letters and notes of support for all of these responders. We put them out for them to see at briefing time and things. That's the kind of support we saw from this community. There will always be criticism. There will always be people who think they can do this job better, and they're entitled to that opinion. What I would tell you is, again, I put my faith in this group of experts, this group of seasoned law enforcement professionals, the dedicated men and women, not only of the Pennsylvania State Police, but of all of the other partner agencies who went out there every day. I'll put my money on them any day of the week, and I believe the community supported them and continues to.
Will he be charged with escape, and when will those charges be filed?
We'll be discussing with the district attorney what, if any, charges will be filed. But for right now, again, there is commitment, and he is going to begin serving his life sentence at a state correctional institution.
When was his sister done?
She is in the deportation proceedings. That will proceed as had been initiated.
Do you know where Cavalcante got the Eagles?
I'm sorry?
Do you know where Cavalcante got the Eagles hoodie from?
I do not.
Other than the rifle, what did he have with him? Did he have anything else?
Just the clothing and things that he was wearing
Did he
at the
attempt
time.
to shoot? Did he attempt to try to disengage?
He did not have an opportunity to, no, sir.
Officers were on the ground as converged.
I don't have an exact number, but looking at the teams we were sending in there, in the immediate vicinity was probably 20 to 25.
And can you tell us more about what those 20 to 25 looked like? Like, did they have specific armor? What
Yes, they were tactical. They were a tactical team. You would expect, camouflage, full armor, long rifles, that kind of thing.
Which agency?
Customs and Border Patrol was their BORTAC team out of El Paso, and then Pennsylvania State Police CERT. It's our Special Emergency Response Team.
Colonel, once on the ground, they've now pinpointed him, right? They're
Yes.
on the ground and they're quietly moving into place. Length of time?
From that point, probably 5 minutes. It played out fairly quickly once they had identified him and moved in. He detected them at that point once they were already in position, and again, he started to crawl away, and it played out very quickly then.
Sir, what is your greatest lesson from this 14-day manhunt?
You know, I don't know that there's any single lesson. I will tell you that I learned something from all of these, and as I told you before, I bring that experience to the next one. And so I just go back to, it's all about the team. It's about assembling the right group of people, the right technology, the people with can-do attitudes who will stick with you through the investigation. And that's what we did. And it's worked well for us in the past, and I'm sure will work well for us in the future.
Colonel, said there were people intending to help. I just want to see if we can get a little more detail from you on that. You did mention, you did confirm the sister was intending to help. Who else might have been intending to help? I mean, can you give us any details?
And the reason I'm not going to talk about that again, as I mentioned, we will be discussing with the district attorney whether there will be any additional charges. I don't expect that there will be on that aspect, but we want to have that discussion before we disclose anything else. No, I think he stopped because his normal pattern was to travel in the late evening, earlier overnight hours. Whether he got tired or whatever, normally he typically didn't travel then later at night, and he typically did not travel during the day unless we pushed him. And we did have several instances of that where he was pushed and had to move. But you know, he doesn't have night vision or anything like that, the type of technology that many of our operators had out there. And so traversing rugged terrain is difficult to do. I believe it was just easier for him to do in the late evening hours and late afternoon. I believe that's what caused it. It was a scalp wound, and they bleed pretty significantly. I'm told there was not any significant injury.
Did he have a phone?
Just one, ma'am. No, I mean, all along, you know, we asked people to secure as best they could. Unfortunately, he was still able to acquire some of those things. Again, those are just some of the challenges we deal with in an investigation like this. Our people rise to those challenges, and ultimately, again, he was successfully captured.
I know that you led the effort also in July earlier this year when that person escaped using bedsheets. It was a chocolate lab that ultimately led to his arrest, and now here we are again. You're talking about a canine moving in and basically disabling Cavalcante. Can you just kind of talk about the having canines and their use and how much of an asset they are when you're trying to navigate tough terrain and track down dangerous people?
Sure. I mean, in the case of Tucker, he was kind of a civilian. I would say we deputized, and brought him in. He's now an honorary member of PSP, but lab. But he was not involved in this. That was in Warren that this gentleman was referring to. Just, you know, I believe it's a Shepherd or a Belgian Malinois. Just 1 minute, if I can come back to this gentleman, I apologize. In any event, canines play a very important role, not only for tracking, but also for, just like in a circumstance like this, safely capturing someone. Far better that we're able to release a patrol dog like this and have them subdue the individual than have to use lethal force. And so, again, our preference is always to use other means. Canines play a very important role.
For those of us who aren't familiar with the area, can you tell us a little bit more about where he was? It appears he was in front of a commercial building. Was he hiding within that building, or he was?
He was in the wooded area, again, west of PA 100 there. PA 100. No, that'll all be part of the interview we'll attempt to do. Whether he'll talk to us or not, that's obviously entirely up to him. But that will be something that we'll be asking.
Sir, at this juncture, you release
Unfortunately, I don't have that the list of those locations. I know that he did a variety of jobs installing flooring, but I don't have the specific list of locations. Long enough for us to process him, and however long an interview lasts with him. I don't expect it to be for a very extended period of